What's up, future officers? I extend this very warm welcome to all of you to our class 2 of iLead. In our first section today, we are discussing What's the Buzz. As you all know, What's the Buzz is this section wherein we pick up viral reels from YouTube and Instagram, and we look at which are those movies which are making the headlines and which traditionally don't appear in the newspaper but nevertheless still hold UPSC relevance. In today's news, we are discussing this very viral reel which was found all over Instagram and YouTube a few days back. This reel showed a 45-year-old man from Afghanistan marrying a 6-year-old small girl, okay, in this concept called child marriage. And when this news went berserk, you know who intervened? It was the Taliban. And they arrested this person, and what they told was 6 years is a very small age for the girl to be married. Okay, fine, agreed. But after we will imprison you for now, we will put you in jail. But after 3 years, we'll release you. And at 9 years old, she's fit to be married. Okay, you can consummate the marriage at that particular time. Okay, you can see what Taliban is up to. Almost ever since Taliban came to power in 2021, we see that all of this child marriages has been on an ever increasing trend, right? So after 2021, you can see that the status of women in Afghanistan has worsened, and to such an extent that all the women's voices is structurally damaged and their voices have been silenced, right? So let us quickly have a look as to what are the changes, and if you were a woman living in Afghanistan and 2025, how would your life be, right? So in Afghanistan, education for women is a distant dream. They cannot acquire the joy of learning. They cannot pursue their aspirations. They cannot intellectually develop themselves. They cannot actualize their potential in terms of education. Everything is just cut off. Maximum in some areas until 6th standard studying for girls is allowed. But after 6th standard, it is completely banned. No universities whatsoever will open their gates for any women, right? The second one is work. We all know that Afghanistan has been in war with Taliban for a long time, and now Taliban has emerged victorious and they are heading the government. But in this process, there were a lot of men who lost their lives. In this time, it was the women who were the sole breadwinners, right? And right now, in the Taliban government, they are telling no women should work. Okay, and when they are telling no women should work, all these bustling beauty salons, beauty parlors are completely shut off in Afghanistan. No beauty parlors whatsoever, no employment opportunities for women. In fact, they are not even allowed to move outside their house if not for a male chaperone. Okay, and this male chaperone is called as mahram, right? So who is this mahram? It can be a small child who is a boy, it can be an old man, or it can be anybody. But if a woman has to step outside a house, or if a girl child has to step outside her house, she necessarily and mandatorily has to be accompanied by a man. The next thing is identity, right? So identity of a woman is buried beneath a veil. We see that many of the times the mandatory burqa rule and this veil which is worn is almost too strictly enforced. Anybody who's coming out of it might be punished, okay, according to the ad hocism rules of Taliban. Next is this concept, okay, this very barbaric concept of something called as Valwar. Okay, now what happens in Valwar is that they go, if they see that a girl child is healthy, if she is beautiful, then any man can approach that particular family, give a sum of money and book that particular girl, okay, for marriage. Then later on, they would purchase that girl in the name of marriage and treat her complete life, okay, without, she cannot step outside her house. She has to be confined inside these 4 walls, and she will be treated like a sex slave, right? The last concept which is over here, which you have to know, is this concept of Baad or Badal. Okay, so what is this Baad or Badal? Okay, again, you see that this is again a very, very barbaric practice. Usually, if there is some dispute between two families, okay, a way of resolving or resolution for this particular dispute is called as badal. Usually what happens here is without the girl's consent or without asking that girl, okay, they would marry that girl from the victim's family. If there is two dispute between, let's say, family 1 and family 2, if family 2 is damaged in a particular way, how family 2 are the victims. Now how family 1 would compensate or resolve this dispute is they would send a girl in terms of marriage to family 2. Now family 2, okay, many times they would totally treat her like a sex slave. Okay, they would abuse her. Many times, keeping that anger which the family 1 has done, they would hit her, domestically abuse her, and all of these practices, right? So this is what happens in this barbaric practice called as Bad or Badal. So you see that ever since the regime of Taliban, it is not just women's voices which are being silenced, but a very structural oppression which is being carried out for women to not express their rights, for women to not have any kind of personality, for women to even feel a suffocation in their very existence. This is the systematic gender apartheid which is going on in Taliban. In fact, the International Criminal Court has said that this gender apartheid is said to be a crime against humanity, and it is trying hard to classify this as a crime against humanity, right? So this is something we have to understand in this first section of What's the Buzz. In our second section, we come to something called as Prelims competence, or in short, we can call it as pre-competence. So here, we try to look at certain questions and try to explore certain factual information which are relevant for the prelims exam. Now, in our first question, there is a small MCQ. Usually, you have to remember one thing about the UPSC exam. If it has already asked a question about it, and if it's a familiar concept, there can be a question in depth about it. Usually, when it is an unfamiliar word, okay, in that case, they just ask superficial, surface level questions, right? In this particular first question, we see what exactly they're asking, what exactly is Shinkansen technology. Okay, it is primarily associated with advancement of which of the following fields. Now, under this particular question, they've given 4 options. Is it relating to space exploration and rocketry? Is it relating to high-speed rail transport? Is it relating to deep sea submarine navigation? Or is it something about agriculture irrigation system? Okay, so it's a very easy question if you know. Okay, something called as Shinkansen technology. You have to understand now. I'll tell you more about it. This is relating to high-speed rail transportation. Okay, there is something which should be etched in your mind. Factual information you have to know. Okay, so Shinkansen technology, what is it dealing with? It is dealing with high-speed rail transportation, or it is nothing but Japanese for bullet train. Okay. Now, this has been in news. Let's try to see why it was in news. But before this, okay, we see that the origin and development of this concept of bullet train in Japan was introduced in 1964. Okay, and because of this particular high-speed rail, it revolutionized train transport completely. Okay, trail transport was revolutionized by this particular process. Next, if we see bullet trains, it is not very easy for Indian rails to operate. Now, why is that? Because these train rails, they work at extreme speed, 300 kilometers per hour, 400 kilometers per hour. So you can imagine at that particular high speed, if the rail corridors are moving in all the slant directions, in that case, it is not possible to move at that speed. So you need straight rails with minimal curvatures, right? That is another feature about design and infrastructure. So what kind of rails do you need? You need straight rails with minimal curvature. Okay. So this is something which you have to note down. Next, if we look at the safety aspect of this particular thing, these trains are earthquake proof. Okay, these trains are earthquake proof and they detect earthquake automatically, and they have something called as automatic shutdown mechanism. Automatic shutdown mechanism. Okay, now automatic shutdown mechanism is again something which is very important. Like how you have a train collision system. Okay, what is it called? Kavach, right? So train collision system, anti-train collision system, which is called as Kavach. Now similarly, to stop this in bullet trains, you have something called automatic shutdown system. Okay, you have to remember this. It can be a factual data which can be asked to make a prelims question, right? Next, technological innovation. Okay, how is this particular train, bullet train, a technological innovation? See, it uses lightweight materials. Okay, when prelims question is asked, what do you think? Does it use a heavyweight material or a lightweight material? If it has to go at that speed, obviously they would be using lightweight material only, no? Okay, and will it be energy efficient? Yes, it will be energy efficient. Okay, what would be the operational speed for this? Operational speed would be 320 kilometers per hour. Okay, so many countries, okay, now India combined, like China, France, okay, Japan, of course, okay, it was the inventor, and now even India, we are all heading towards bullet trains. Okay, and what is the technology, emerging technology we are using? We are using an emerging technology called as maglev. What is maglev? Maglev is the short form of magnetic levitation. Okay, so it almost does not touch the tracks itself. It uses this magnetic levitation to just zoop past. Okay, but everything said and done, how do you think this particular project holds relevance to India? See, we are adopting bullet trains in Mumbai-Ahmedabad corridor. Mumbai-Ahmedabad corridor. Okay. So, having this bullet train project there, right now we are looking to adopt something called as Alpha X. Okay. So, this particular Alpha X is using something called as a E10 engine. Now, what is the speciality about this E10 engine? It is very, very fast. We were using something called E5 engine before, but now it is a significant advancement over this E5 engine. Okay, in this E10 engine, the train can move at 400 kilometers per hour. Now, being equipped with this particular ATC, that is automatic train control, this Shinkansen, this particular train project, is equipped with the perfect safety record. Okay, there is no accidents whatsoever which has happened so far. So you can imagine that it is something which is of high safety. Okay, coming to the very next news, which is of high relevance for the prelims exam, we have this port which is called as Machilipatnam, which is in news, which actually reminded me of a question in 2017 UPSC prelims. Okay, the question went like this: which one of the following was a very important seaport of the Kakatiya kingdom? Okay, Kakinada, Motupalli, Machilipatnam, Nelluru. The answer for this is Motupalli. Okay, but every time UPSC gives a question, there might be a different answer. But the other options are also very important because it can become a question in the upcoming years, right? So that is why right now Machilipatnam is in news, so we have to know whatever there is about it. Okay, so this particular thing was a headline 1 or 2 days back. So what it told was that Machilipatnam, the ancient port, is said to be revived. For a very long time, it was a stale port where nothing was running, right? It was just an ancient port. Okay, it was again revived in the medieval age. It was again revived by the Dutch, the Portuguese. Then after that, again it was, it just remained stagnant. Now again it is planned to be renovated and it is set to be operationalized by 2026. Okay, by 2026 it is set to be operationalized, and for the very first phase, a sum of rupees 5,155 crore is said to be operationalized. That is the investment which is to be done, and the capacity of this particular port annually is 38 million metric tons. Okay, 38 million metric tons. This is the capacity. What do Telangana and Andhra Pradesh plan to export from here? Okay, mainly it is coal. Okay, these are the major exports: coal, cement, pharmacy, okay, and fertilizers. So these are the major exports, right? And apart from this, the locals in Machilipatnam, they are also very happy. Why? Because they are going to get a lot of employment once this particular port is developed. But is all of this news important? No. The historical aspect of this port, that is what is important from the prelims perspective. Now, if I have to tell you a little bit about Machilipatnam, Machilipatnam is on the banks of river Krishna. Okay, it is on the banks of river Krishna, and it reaches this Bay of Bengal. So it is right in this conjunction of where Krishna meets Bay of Bengal, right? If you look at this particular thing, you can see over here of where exactly Machilipatnam is located. Next particular thing is that this Machilipatnam was an ancient trading port. Ancient trading port which facilitated trade with Arabs, Romans, and the Southeast Asian traders, right? After that, this was again revived in the Shatavahana period. Okay, as you all know that Shatavahana period was from 1st century to 3rd century CE. Okay, so Machilipatnam emerged as a vibrant port where many of the times spices were traded, pearls were traded, right? And textiles were traded. All these things were traded in the Machilipatnam port. And again, it was linked to many inland cities. This particular port was linked to many inland cities like Amaravati, Dharani Kota. So these were again major centers, and this also acted as a cultural exchange where Buddhism also thrived because of the Machilipatnam port. Again, we see that in the medieval era, again, this was again revived in the 16th and 18th century by the Dutch and Portuguese. But however, this was again reshifted by the British East India Company. This main trading center was reshifted by the East India Company, right? So this was how it was. The Dutch, the Portuguese, they tried to improve Machilipatnam. But what happened? Because the British East India Company was the company which gained prominence, this whole trading center was shifted from Machilipatnam back to Madras, right? Apart from knowing about Machilipatnam, if you look at the prelims point of view, we see that lot of times you might even get match the following kind of questions, wherein certain towns will be given and they might ask you which dynasty were responsible for constructing this particular port city. So you have to have that list and you have to by heart this. Okay, so you see that when it comes to port city, first thing you have to know is Arikamedu. Where was Arikamedu? It was in Puducherry. So who are responsible for this? It was the Cholas who developed Arikamedu. One more port city which they were responsible was Kaveri Pattanam. Okay, so this is something which you have to know. Of course, you would all know this, that Lothal was the port city during the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, then you have something called as Sopara. Okay, so Sopara was the port city which was there in Maharashtra. Now, this was made as a port city during the Satavahana reign, right? Satavahanas, we have seen that they were responsible for developing Machilipatnam also. Okay, next one is Tamralipta. Now, Tamralipta, you know, is in West Bengal. Okay, so this was headed by Mauryas and Guptas, right? The last one is Bari Gaza. Okay, where is Bari Gaza? It is in Baruch. Okay, the Baruch province. So who are responsible for this? Okay, development of this port city was by Indo-Greeks and the Kushanas. Okay, so these were all the ports and these were all the dynasties. So I hope that this has given you a little more clarity, right? Moving on to the next section, that is now you know. Here, today's mains analysis topic is about a paradox which India is facing. That is about the STEM education. Now you might be wondering as to what exactly is this STEM education. See, STEM education means, it is an acronym basically. STEM means science, technology, engineering and mathematics. So usually in these professional courses, usually we see that about 43% of the women in our country are graduates in the STEM universities, in the STEM courses. However, despite 43% of them being graduates in this STEM universities, only about 27% of them are actually working and are part of the workforce in India. So you see that this remains a paradox for us. So many people are graduating. Okay, in almost in 100%, almost 57% of them are men, 43% are women, right? But only hardly few of them are entering the job arena and the workforce arena. Now, in this particular article, we will try to decode why exactly this is happening, right? So let's try to see why women's participation in STEM is important first and how does it cater to India's economic growth. The first thing is that if women are part of the economic system, okay, they will be part of the economic growth story. Let me present to you a statistic which is given by McKinsey estimate. Okay, so this McKinsey estimate, what it tells is that the GDP of this country can go up by $700 billion. Okay, by $700 billion, it can go up. Second thing is that this GDP growth impact, 50% of the female workforce, okay, and according to a World Bank estimate, this will add to 1% growth. This will directly transition to 1% extra growth rate in our country. Who is giving this estimate? It is the World Bank who is giving this estimate. The third one is that there is a severe underutilized talent pool. Okay, so the highest share, that is almost 43% of women STEM graduates, are among the major economies of the world. Okay, but however, they remain untapped. They are not utilized at all, right? So this becomes a problem for us. Okay, and next we talk about the inclusive development vision. What is India's vision by 2047? That we will become a developed country. Developed country, we use a particular terminology. What is that terminology? We will call ourselves as Viksit Bharat. Viksit Bharat by when? Viksit Bharat by 2047. What kind of a Viksit Bharat do we want to be? We want to be an inclusive and we want to be a equitable development model, right? Now having to be equitable, having to be inclusive, okay, so this will cater to this vision. That's why women's participation is very important. Next one is a social multiplier effect. Okay, now see what will happen if a woman goes to work. Number one, she will be financially independent. She can make family decisions, right? She can make family decisions. It will change the workplace culture if women are around, right? Next, it will lead to broader policy making. Okay, it will lead to more inclusive policy making. It will lead to more gender neutral policy making, right? After all of this, one more reason why it is very important for women to be included is bridging the economic gaps. Usually we see that we have to address a certain address a certain gap. What is this gap? It is basically education to employment gap. What gap? Education to employment gap. Under this education to employment gap, we see that there is a disconnect in STEM, right? So this will help us bridge this particular gap. In fact, this can even be a key to increasing India's competitiveness and our inclusiveness. Next, now see, women 43% are there, but hardly 27% are entering the workforce. What are those barriers which are preventing them after they complete the education to enter the workforce? Let's try to discuss and decode these points. First thing is some social stereotypes which are there already existing in the society. Something which is ingrained in everybody's minds. Okay, how this indoctrination happened, nobody knows. Okay, it's just happened through time. But these stereotypes nevertheless exist. What are these stereotypes? See, the first one is certain things like mechanical engineering means masculine engineering. Okay, girls cannot do coding. These are certain stereotypes which exist in our society. Because of this, less and less girls are incentivized to take up that STEM education, right? Second thing is some workplace barriers. Okay, what are these workplace barriers? Imagine that I'm a woman who wants to enter the workforce. There is an unwelcoming environment in a certain office, right? There is unequal pay. We all know that according to DPSP Article 39D, it has to give us that usually there has to be equal pay for equal work. But is there actually this equal remuneration? No, there isn't. There is usually some differences in pay, right? So these workplace barriers exist and this support ecosystem is somewhere lacking, right? Next one is family and awareness gaps. So usually a lot of times families themselves, they push the girl children to finish up engineering, medicine, mathematics, everything they finish. But after that, they are also clueless as to what exactly can be done, what are the career opportunities that their girl can pursue. They are also clueless, and because of this becomes a barrier for them to start working. Generally, again, safety and support also becomes a very important concern, because a lot of times there is sexual harassment at workplace, there is some glass ceilings at workplace. Okay, many of the times in a lot of the informal sector, there is no complaints mechanism, there is no grievance redressal, and because of all of this, it creates a lot of hesitation for sending their women, their girl children to work in these particular fields. Next one is the inadequate industry initiatives. What is the inadequate industry initiative? Usually, the mentorship programs are not very up to date. Some industry linked training is not proper. Like for example, there was an Infosys report, okay, which says that almost 50% of the engineers who are graduating are not employable. They do not know the necessary skill sets. That is why Infosys has to give them 6 months training before it has to hire them and it has to place them in work, right? So industry linked training is not there in the education system. Okay, next one is some bridge gaps. Okay, especially course bridge gaps which are there from classroom to careers. Okay, so all these things, it has to be taken forward and these barriers have to be overcome, right? Next one is the key initiatives of what can be done, okay, or what already is done rather. So the first thing is NEP, National Education Policy 2020 reforms, which is brought in. So because of this, what is happening for women training is that already you see that education is interlinked with technical training, and along with that already life skills are also integrated along with this. So because of all of this, what is happening is that it is enhancing the opportunities for women. Okay, second one is that there is some IT and vocational training. Now IT and vocational training means that it is extending the technical institutes and technical education to rural India. Okay. The third one, very, very important concept, gender budgeting. So what do we mean by gender budgeting? It does not mean that there will be a separate budget for gender, but whatever budget is made, in that there will be a policy which is driven by keeping in mind the roles and responsibilities and giving a lot of impetus to gender neutrality. So this is called as gender budgeting. So this gender budgeting, it rose from almost 6.8% before to right now 8.8%. Okay, so you can see that there is a considerable budgetary allocation which is increased for improving the status of women, right? So how much would this amount to? This is amounting to 4.49 lakh crores. Okay, 4.49 lakh crores. Again, there are many flagship schemes. Okay, what are these flagship schemes? The most famous ones, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Okay, along with that, you have schemes like PM Vishwakarma Yojana. Okay, Vishwakarma Yojana. Then there is something called Skill India. Right? So all of this, it aims to boost the empowerment of women who are living. Then you have certain budgetary measures as well, wherein certain loans are introduced to women entrepreneurs. Okay, and new skill training measures are taken. Next, we move to the last section, which is by the people tree. Now here we see an ethics example. Now this example, it talks about Akshat Verma IAS. So Akshat Verma IAS was a recently passed out IAS officer who is right now the municipal commissioner of Banaras. So he is a person who transformed Varanasi's problems into opportunities. The heading itself seems very attractive, but how exactly did this happen? See, in Varanasi there is a practice that whoever Varanasi, they tell that it's a very ancient living city. So people who go to Varanasi, Banaras, they usually, along with their sins, they go and take a holy dip in Ganga, and after that they leave behind all their clothes and then they come back to their home. But all these clothes were dumped in the banks of Ganga, thereby polluting it to a very big level. This was causing a lot of pollution, number one. Second, all the animals were trying to feed on it and it was creating dietary problems for them, and it was hazardous to their health as well. So now this young person, Akshat Verma IAS sir, what he comes and does is something which is commendable. First thing he does is very simple. The root of every problem is first identifying that there is a problem. He identified that this clothes is a problem. Then he changed this problem into opportunity. How did he do this? Number one, he spoke to some initiatives. Number one, he spoke to an NGO called as Hope Foundation. So what this Hope Foundation did was that they collected all these clothes from the banks, okay, for the help of their NGO. Then there was something called as Green Army. So this Green Army is nothing but, it was a group of women, okay, about 50 women in the beginning, but now it has increased in number. Okay, so women who were part of something called as a self-help group. I am sure all of you know what is self-help group. It is a very important topic in your governance also. Questions have been asked. So Green Army, so they would collect all this and give it to Green Army. Now what this Green Army did was that they would convert all these clothes into cloth bags, right? Now after converting them to cloth bags, then initially 1 lakh bags were distributed to different shopkeepers free of cost. Later, after seeing the efficacy and so that it will reduce plastic pollution, okay, lot of people started giving money and buying them. So cloth bags is again reusable also, so it is more eco-friendly. So in this case, garbage was being collected, it was being processed by this NGO called Hope Foundation. Okay, you see how the government is engaging with the civil society in this manner. Again, all this collection was going to a self-help group. Now the self-help group were making bags. Now this bag is again giving them employment, it is giving them money. So all of them, they are becoming more self-efficient. Okay, so number one, women are getting employment, plastic pollution is tackled, and the aesthetics of Ganga is again being maintained. So you see how a problem is changed and transformed by this paradigm shift, by this thought, okay, of how it becomes an opportunity and creates employment for so many people. Okay, so we have to give it up for Akshat Verma, right? So he is this person who has changed. Now we have to try to bring him into our answers and try to write about him in our ethics copies. With this, I hope that you guys had fun learning and this session was informative. I'll see you all on class 3. Thank you and have a nice day.